Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I have been inspired by this upcoming release of Warhammer 40,000 Imperium Maledictum, the roleplay system from Cubicle 7, and thought of to be the spiritual successor to Dark Heresy, which is a role-playing game that I hold close to my heart. It's something I dived headfirst into and loved running with my friends years ago. So let's see how this pairs, and I'm going to have a quick run through the chapters and tell you about the different things that kind of stood out. So let's go. So, creating a patron. That's new. The old Dark Heresy system was based all around the Inquisition. You were one of members of a band of acolytes that worked under an Inquisitor, went out, rooted out heresies, etc. With this system, however, things are a little bit different. We have, instead, factions. So, find yourself working for either the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Adeptus Administratum, the Astra Militarum, insert joke about Hero Guard here, the Adeptus Ministrum, the Inquisition, the Imperial Fleet, a Rogue Trainer Dynasty, or Infractionists. And then within each of those, we have a couple of kind of flavours of who your patron is. So, Astra Telepathica, examples we've got here are they're an astropath or a Sister of Silence. And you'll find there's two examples in each of the other factions going through. Which, of course, my initial thoughts jump out to me is when you come to Inquisition, there is 3 main branches, which you can obviously get around it. I'm sure, you know, Gamesmaster's going to work through it. Both the Ordo Hereticus and Ordo Xenos we have here use the same free boon, Limitless Authority, so you could easily just have Ordo Malleus with that same boon. The boon thing, you can see basically you've got a table, you roll on for them or for liabilities, and the idea is for every boon you've got a liability. You start with 1 for a boon, and then you can pick up to 3 extra ones. You work with your players, you roll these up, and then these will give you various bonuses. Initial thoughts, pretty cool system. Right away you can see the whole sort of influence system is going to be very important because, well, for example, Inquisition, your patron has +2 influence with the Inquisition. There you go. So, a lot of these boons of liabilities all seem to go into that. My initial thoughts is you wouldn't necessarily want to work with the players to do this. If you're running a game where you are an Inquisitor, I feel like the Inquisition is very, very secretive, so would the players necessarily know all about their Inquisitor? No, absolutely not. But would some of these factions work well, working together with the players and the Games Masters to create this? Yeah, absolutely, yes. Lots of fun things to do with there. And you work through this chapter, basically deciding what specific kind of branch they're in, and then what the motivation of your patron is, what their demeanour is, and then you kind of work out the kind of pay grade and everything that's associated with that. And the boons and liabilities, they can do lots of cool things, bonuses to dealing with different factions. Some help with getting skills cheaper when it comes to experience costs, cheaper equipment, or even like introductions. Like you can literally play Imperial tax collectors and play a campaign with that, or have like the cover of going under some tax collectors to a faction, and that way, you know, get in and, you know, skulk about and do all your kind of investigation side of stuff. Liabilities are the flip side. Lots of things there to screw up your plans, making like enemies with different kind of people. Maybe they're kind of draconian or dogmatic, kind of miser. Maybe your pay grade is worse because your patron's a bit of a miser, or maybe you get kind of shoddy equipment. So that all kind of goes into that. Next section we've got character, all important character creation. So works pretty much the same as Dark Heresy. You have 2d10 plus 20 create characteristics, and we can hop on to here's one I created earlier. So yeah, so your weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, toughness, agility, intelligence, perception, willpower, and fellowship. Same sort of stuff as you go in Dark Heresy. And then what they do is, depending on your homeworld, depends all the kind of bonuses you get from that, and the extra equipment you might get, so on. And they do it differently in this. Quite like it. It's an interesting system. Essentially, if you kind of submit yourself to the RNG gods, you get a bonus experience. If you don't, if you start swapping stuff or rerolling stats and things, you get less bonus experience. We go through it. You pick your home worlds, and then you got your faction, or like where you started work essentially, and you know, you can roll on tables that are influenced by your homeworld. So if your homeworld is, say, like Voidborn, you're more likely to end up with the Astra Telepathica faction, that kind of thing. Then you've got your duty, which kind of is your specific thing you've done there. You can take presets, so things like Imperial Navy, you've got the Imperial Navy pilots, officer, or armsman, and they've got preset things you add to your sheet for that, or there is the fully open option, which you can pick and choose what extra skills or things you get through that. Next thing you've got in the character creation is your role, and that is kind of more like your career path from Dark Heresy. So things like you can be like an interlocutor, which is like your social manipulation character. You can be a mystic, so your psychers basically. You can be a savant, which is your lore monkey. They're also quite good at like Medicae. You can be a penumbra, which is your stealthy thieves or assassins. You can be a warrior, or you can be a zealot. There's lots of random tables for character creation, name, age, looks, all that kind of stuff. Pretty standard stuff. I like it. There's also character goals, which is good. There's a lot more in-depth kind of look into figuring out what your character wants to do, what their goal is, their motivation. What is their motivation? And you kind of go through all that. Create your character, and there you go. Job done. Oh yeah, and there's one final bit in that as well, is you've got your... There's a way of kind of linking up to other... It kind of recommends a kind of link to another character and your patron. You can roll on a table, and it could be things like you owe money to another character, and maybe your patron saved your life or something. Fun things to kind of link your characters together. Next section, skills and talents. So, skills and talents. How does that work? Well, this is where it gets quite different from the old Dark Heresy system. In the old Dark Heresy system, we had all your kind of skills here. I think there was around about 50 in the game. You had some basic ones and then advanced ones, which you just couldn't do unless you had training. In it, you had your +10, or you could be untrained, you could be trained in it. Yeah, +10 or +20, and then there was the option to get talents for getting an extra boost there to a maximum of +30. Characteristic advances, you could only improve any characteristic 4 times. For getting more expensive each time, and each time you improved it by 5 points. Which means, of course, for this character here I've rolled up, I could get a maximum skill on weapon skill of 60. In the lands of Imperium Maledictum, a bit different. So in Imperium Maledictum, for the skills and talents, so same characteristics, but if you increase a characteristic, you increase it by 1. Obviously, far reduced experience costs. So for this character here, you can see I've improved strength. So starting strength was 27. I've improved it twice to 29. So very, very kind of small increases on your stats there. And you can do that until you hit the 60 cap, which is the max there. Skills, however, increase it at +5 and cap at +20. So fundamentally the same as Dark Heresy. It's just, you know, instead of 2 advances at +10, you've got 4 at +5. But then what we do is, with our much smaller skill pool here, this is all the skills. Within each of these skills, though, there is a set of specializations. And specializations give you +5 in some sort of sub-skill. For example, here we have, you've got agility, which relates to the skill reflexes. Within reflexes, you can take a specialization known as dodge, which, guess what that does. And with that, you're getting that extra +5 there. So it gives you that little extra boost on the skill sort of thing. I suppose it's somewhere in between like the old talent skill and Dark Heresy. Well, talented skill. And also kind of cutting down skills and making them more kind of niche. One kind of bizarre side note, pickpocket and sleight of hand are separate specializations for some reason. I guess coming from playing like Dungeons and Dragons, that's a little bit weird, but yeah, I can see it, it makes sense, I suppose. As for talents compared to Dark Heresy, a lot of them, you could just take a talent. Some of them had some requirements, but it seems like all talents have some kind of prerequisite. For example, Gunslinger, you need to be ambidextrous and have 2 advances in ranged, as in this ranged skill here. You can see here I've got some talents on this character I've created, like Deadeye, which lets me aim with a ranged attack and gain a +1 success level. Success level is when you roll like 10 under what you required, which is the old degrees of success system in the Dark Heresy system game. So, talents, pretty decent. A lot are taken from Dark Heresy, it would seem, but there's also some cool, fun new things, like gallows humour, literally calming people down with dark jokes. So, someone's scared, you can tell a really bad joke and try to shake them out of it. Okay, so that is the skills and talents, kind of initial thoughts. If we jump forward, we have the Armoury. And here we go, the Armoury. Welcome to the Armoury. Pretty much as expects, all sort of guns and equipment. Same sort of stuff you got in Dark Heresy. everything from book speeds to communicate to people, like packs. There's stuff on trading, which, you know, some things are easier to find in certain types of worlds, so we'll add that in the Dark Heresy system as well. Makes sense, I like it. Keeping much of the same kind of stuff here. So, weapon profiles. This here is Dark Heresy, an example of bolt pistol. Everything was done in meters, how far you could move, how far you could shoot, etc. So for example, we've got a bolt pistol here. It is a pistol class, 30 meter range, has a rate of fire of a single shot or semi-automatic 2. 1d10 plus 5 damage, which is X. That's the type damage, which is explosive. Penetration of 4, flip of 8, full action to reload the weapon, and then you've got your weight here, like 3.5 kilograms, how much it costs to buy, and availability. Now, as I mentioned, some worlds you can modify how easy it is, hard to get a hold of equipment, and you have to sort of like do inquiry rolls to try kind of find all that stuff. Dark Heresy, and then stump up the costs, so on. There's also different craftsmanships as weapons in the game, which, you know, could give you different kind of bonuses or negatives if they're, you know, quite shoddy. Imperium Maledictum, let's have a look. Again, got the same sort of stuff. Here we have a bolt pistol. Pistol class, fixed damage. So we're not rolling for damage now on pistols. It's just boom, straight 8 damage. And this is the first bit in the book where we go, hold on, what's happened to ranges? The range is medium. So right away we can see it's going to an abstract system. And the magazine is 2. Well, we know for a fact bolt pistols don't fire 2 shots, so that's a change as well. Encumbrance is 1. You can see, again, abstract system here. It costs 4,000, Jesus, 4,000 scores. And availability, and then the traits for the weapon. So a lot of these things, just the same as you get in the kind of Dark Heresy system. I should point out the bolt weapons got ratted to have the tearing special, which basically meant they had more chance of doing more damage. Now, bolt pistols in Imperium Maledictum. Look at this, we've got all this kind of abstract figure thing going on here. So what is that all about? Well, what they've done is they have changed some stuff. Let me hop back a few pages. So encumbrance is just a generic value. Instead of like tracking specific weights, we've got 0, 1, 2, 3. Everything from like coins to like swords and pistols, chain axes, missile launchers. And our encumbrance is what that's all to do with. Total encumbrance of items you can carry without penalty is equal to your strength bonus plus your tough bonus. So it's abstract, and to be honest, that's alright. That's not too bad. It can get a bit kind of gritty, kind of calculating the weights. But then you've got your range, which is again abstract. So, well, from that we can kind of deduce that when we get to the rule section, movement is going to change as well, which I have to wonder about. But I'll circle back to that. I'll circle back to that. But no, it's for the rest of the section though, it is pretty good. Again, we've got special rules for different kind of weapons, like shoddy ones, goes to -10, or reduce armor, etc. Again, you can have different qualities, and then there's a whole kind of bartering system, stuff you can do. So yeah, all that kind of stuff is there in the game. On to the next section then, and that's going to be psychic powers. So then, psychic powers. This is where some of the real kind of juicy fun can come from, these 40k role-playing systems. As anyone familiar with the lore knows, psychic powers are drawn from the warp, which is a kind of dimension that sits alongside real space, and it's used for all the kind of space travel, and it's also literally a big hell dimension filled with all sorts of nasties. Psychers tap into this, and with that they're able to manifest effects, kind of like magic. Now, in Dark Heresy, we had psi ratings, much like kind of spellcaster levels essentially, and that kind of determined the amount of dice you could roll. And for example, you would say you had a psi rating of 2, you'd roll 2 dice, or you could roll up to 2, you didn't have to roll all of them, and then you'd add your roll powered bonus. And the idea is there's a psychic threshold of each power that you want to try and manifest. The idea is you would try and roll and kind of match that or get higher. And then what they've done as well is if any of those dice rolls adds a 9 on it, you would then roll on the psychic phenomena table. And that's where all sorts of weird stuff like could happen, like the walls would start bleeding. You know, it got like super cold, kind of hoar frost going on. Or if you're particularly unlucky, you'd roll the the higher result of the table, which would get you onto a secondary table called Perils of the Warp, and that's where all sorts of real nasty stuff could happen. You could have like, you know, whole kind of like body swap situations, or summoning demons, or literally you could get eaten by the warp and your character just dies. Boom, there you go. Have a nice day. Roll new character. Psychic powers in Imperium Maledictum, likewise, have some peril to them, which makes it interesting, makes it fun. And if we have a look at this, we can see just how it works. So, there we go. So to use power in Imperium Maledictum, you choose power to manifest your psychic mastery test. Using difficulty listed, you gain warp charge. Now that's where things changed a bit. So warp charge builds as you cast powers, with the psyker occasionally needing to kind of purge their warp charge, or you risk getting the kind of perils of the warp roll. And yes, in Imperium Maledictum, you can still end up summoning a greater demon. Hey! So, you choose your power, you make the tests. An example that you've got here is Rita Imps Manifest Power Smite, and as it's a difficult test, it's a -10. Her effective psychic mastery is reduced by 10, making it a 45. Rolls a 34, succeeding with 1 SL, which is success level. For making tests in Dark Heresy, they called it a degree of success. You rolled 10 greater than what you required, and this is called success level. So, same thing really. Psychic mastery tests get modified by the power, so you can see it still depends on the power. So, in Dark Heresy, you just literally had a higher number, like your threshold to try roll. In this, it's kind of more like making a skill test, so it's that or less. And then difficulty modified by the power itself. We flip to some later pages. You can see, for example, combustion here is routine. It's plus 20 to your test, so quite easy to cast. And again, we've got this generic kind of range thing going on, medium, or like short, all that kind of stuff. How many targets you can get, description of what it does. Dread Presence, you can see Dread Presence has a challenge in 0, so it doesn't modify the test. So some easier or harder to cast. One thing I've noticed is the dull pain power. It says you can dull the sensitivity to pain on a creature, You can choose number including yourself, up to the success level of your manifest test, within short range, and until starting next turn, the target feels no pain, and its toughness bonus increases by 1 for the purposes of reducing damage. Now, I believe this is an oversight on their part, because, as I'll get into later on the rules, the toughness bonus does jack hee-haw to any of your damage reduction, which is something they've ditched on this particular system compared to Dark Heresy. Dark Heresy, armor and toughness bonus all reduce damage, and this is just armor. So I don't know what that is. I don't know if they've changed what they were intending to do with the system. So it's curious. I feel like we're going to get an errata and that's just going to disappear. But anyway, that aside, works much the same. You've still got the kind of lots of different kind of powers, the different kind of disciplines of powers. You've got you've got your biomancy, telekinesis, all that kind of stuff. And you can see when you get up to the kind of more juicy powers, shall we say, test difficulty gets a lot harder. And that's your psychic powers. So looks like a fairly solid system. Interestingly, psychic powers over the years have changed quite a lot. Back in Dark Heresy days, it was like rolling the dice and adding them together to try hit a number. Then it kind of switched round to kind of more like a tests. So if we jump to like the Only War book, for example, it was an actual willpower test, with you getting bonuses depending on your psi rating. So really, the psychic powers have changed quite a lot in each kind of version of the game as it's kind of went along. But yeah, I've no problems with how they've done it in Imperium Maledictum. Seems pretty good. Fairly straightforward. Seems to have got rid of psi ratings. It just seems to be just now got your different powers, and some are harder than others. So that's interesting. And that is pretty much it for psychic powers. So let's hop on to the next section, which is going to be the rules. So here we are, we're in the rules. The rules section of Imperium Maledictum. It kind of lays out all the things you'd expect. As I explained, it is, of course, a D100 system. So, example here, make a stealth test. You roll 37. If your stealth score happens to be 37 or more, succeeded. Well done. Hey. Now, it's got a lot of the similar things you've seen in Dark Heresy, where like the Gamesmaster can apply modifiers ranging from like say -30 up to +60. Make things easier or harder depending on conditions. And then bizarrely adds advantage and disadvantage, where you reverse the dice roll. Now, I'm not quite sure why this is here. You had the occasional talent that let you reverse dice rolls for hit locations in Dark Heresy, but in this system, they've brought in this advantage-disadvantage system where you may reverse the dice roll if it would be better for you, if you've got advantage, and if you've got disadvantage, you have to use the worst result. So they roll 28 here, but if disadvantage, you'd have to take 82 instead, which is a lot worse. I don't see the point of this. Why is this in a system that already has a whole kind of success level system of +10, -10? I don't quite get it. It seems like they're kind of rammed this extra mechanic in here, and as you go on, you kind of realise they do kind of lean into this a bit more some of the combat things. I suspect that is maybe to try make combat slicker. Dark Heresy in combat had a ton of modifiers. When you're shooting at half range, you get +10. You know, you're shooting into smoke, you get some modifiers, say like -20 or something, or darkness, shooting on -30, all this kind of stuff. You got like bonuses for like elevation and stuff. But with this, it's just right down to this kind of interesting mix of systems going on at the same time. I'm not quite sure why it's here. My initial thinking is this seems a bad idea, but because full-on reverse of the role could be very, very bad, or it might make zero difference. I'm not sure. Like, I feel like it's a strange system to introduce when you've already got this level of detail in a game. Now, as I mentioned in the kind of Patron part, there's a lot of influence things in the creation. And there's more stuff in this section that talks about the role of influence being important parts. You had a lot of that in the Dark Heresy system, mostly through all the kind of pure talents, like your Mechanicus, so you could chat with them with bonuses to your fellowship tests. That all seems pretty good. It definitely seems to be a big focus of the game. Superiority is the other kind of new thing in this. Superiority is a system that lets us basically win things before combat, almost. So if you kill bosses, kill elites, kill a bunch of troops, you get bonus to superiority. And if, you know, like on the flip side, if your guys go down or die, you kind of lose superiority. And then each of the bad guys has a resolve rating, and using that, you can essentially win combats or encounters sort of before they even start. You go in, you could kind of like hand wave it, save running through a whole kind of combat thing. Or if you're in the combat and you know, there's a change in superiority, it's a sort of trigger to let the Gamesmaster change enemy behaviour, like maybe have them flee or surrender or make sudden desperate plays where they're, I don't know, running at you with bombs or something. So that's quite cool. It gives you a kind of a system there to quickly resolve that kind of situation where you're at a point in the combat or a situation where, you know, you're better kind of hand waving it and just moving forward with the story. So that's cool. We like that. And in this, the battlefield is split up into zones. Now, already seen in the weapons, they've got the kind of generic things of short, medium, long range. And it's the same with your movement. So, an example we've got in the book is Zone 1, we've got a landing zone here, we've got Zone 2, which is like a river of acid apparently. Zone 3, kind of an open exterior, and then Zone 4, the actual kind of Factorum entrance. And then different kind of features that are in this place, like cover and explosive barrels, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, this is a kind of strange thing where they went kind of abstract with your movement and your shooting just kind of in zones. I don't have any kind of issue really with this kind of system, but it seems strange in this with there being a kind of detailed D100 system of modifiers there. The whole kind of critical wounds and healing system is very detailed, and then it goes quite abstract here. I guess it must be to make the flow of battle quicker as you're playing out these kind of combats, so you don't have to worry too much about distances and things. You're just sort of going, oh, I'm in range, or I need to move a bit further and fire. It seems a strange maneuver going from that, considering Warhammer 40,000 is all known for like tabletop games and precise measuring and stuff. I feel like a lot of people would come from that to this and be like, oh, that's kind of weird. But there you go. Maybe it makes for a smoother game. Okay then, combat. How does that work? Well, in Imperium Maledictum, we start with our turn order, which is your initiative. Unlike a lot of other roleplay systems, this one is literally just whatever your fixed initiative is. No rolling in regard. If there's a tie, we then come down to our reflexes, and then if it's still tied, we then make an opposed test. Now, I feel like in that situation, you would be better just, rolling a d10 each and seeing who rolls higher. Once we sort who's going first, it's on to your turn. You've got all your kind of movement. You can move around the zone. You can move within the same zone for free, or you can move to another zone. And then we have the battlefield, which I've kind of talked about. And then we've got things to take into account. You've got things like dark. You can apply a disadvantage on dexterity melee reflexes, tech use tests, sight tests, seeing things, all these kind of different hazards and things that you've got as well. For making the actual attack though, we check a range, make sure we're in range, roll a hit, then determine your hit location from the units. That's a little bit different. And then we deal with damage. So, example here, we've got Sister Helza in combat with a cult leader. She makes her attack roll with her chainsword, bringing it down, and the heretic defends with their own chainsword. So right away, we have a difference here. We're doing opposed tests, as opposed to a lot of systems where it's literally just you roll to hit, you roll to damage, that's it. This one, in combat, well, in close combat anyway, we are making an opposed test here. And the example they've got here is Helza has the melee of 42, she rolls a 17, giving her 3 success levels on her tests. Cult leader melee of 60 and rolls 78, giving them a -1 success level. Helza wins with a +4 success level. Chainsword deals 3 damage, plus her strength bonus. So she must have strength of 30 something. As we see, in fact, you can see there, she has a strength of 37. So that means she's doing 3 damage from the chainsword, 3 damage from her own strength, and then you add the difference on the attack rolls and the post test there. So that was a difference of 4, grand total of 10 damage. Next we see where she hits. So because she rolled a 17 initially, we check that table there. That means it's hitting the body, because it's between 6 and 10, you're getting the body. And then we check the hit location on the cultist. There's 2 armour on their torso. Deduct that from the total, dealing 8 wounds. Right away we can see this is going to be quite a deadly system. Dark Heresy worked kind of similar on the damage there, but what happened is we had armour values and penetration values on the weapons. Penetration values would take away from the armour, and the toughness bonus would take away from the damage. So suddenly being tougher makes 0 difference in this game system. if you are wearing the exact same armour as someone else. So, for example, take a lasgun, shoot an old man. Take the same las pistol, shoot a space marine. You're going to do the same damage. A little bit weird, but okay. I guess on the one hand, it does make things, again, which seems to be the running goal of this system, as far as I can see, is to make combat slicker. Yeah, so there was a lot of times in Dark Heresy where you'd be playing it, and you make your attack, and then you're like, okay, right, so I've done this much damage, and our gun has this much penetration, and then where we've hit that location, then we need to reduce the damage by the armour, but then reduce how much armour we've got by the penetration of the attack, and then we're going to reduce by the toughness, and then that's how much we're going to take. So I can see the benefit of doing this. Definitely makes it a lot easier to work out. Range attacks, similar thing. Make your attack. We can see here as well, if you've taken the dodge action during your turn, or if you use a reaction, you can oppose the test using the reflexes dodge skill. That's kind of slightly different, but not a million miles away from the Dark Heresy worked. So our example here, Leo sees Hells are struggling, and decides to help. Pulls out his auto pistol, which has a range of medium. You can target with no penalties. Leo has a ranged attack of 40, he rolls 23, giving him 2 success levels, and auto pistol deals 5 damage. It deals additional damage equal to the success level of the test again. So he deals 7 damage. Next, Leo sees where he hit. Using the units result, he rolls a 23, which means it's a 2 on the hit location table according to this. So he rolled a 23 and 2 on the hit location table. That's not how this works, is it? Hold on. So hit location is determined by the units. So if we go here, there are range table thing. He's rolled a 23, which means he would be hitting 3, not 2. On hit location table, it hits the right arm. So 3 is the right arm. Okay, so yeah, they've got a typo there. So that 2 should be a 3. So 3 on the hit location table says it should hit the right arm. Cult leader has armor 2 on their right arm. Spend damage 7 minus 2 equals 5, and the cult leader suffers 5 wounds. Still standing. Wow, that's a tough cult leader. And of course you can dodge and use your reflexes to try reduce the damage. If the opponent wins, the attack deals damage to normal. If you win, you leap out of the way, in fact. Take no damage. So, good way to avoid getting damaged is to have reflexes dodge. So, pretty much the same as Dark Heresy, it is a must pick on the skills. And we can see here, range is at disadvantage if you go beyond your current range. Let's hop back into this chat about the advantage disadvantage then. Advantage disadvantage. We're going to hop back into this for 2 ticks because now we've went over the combat rules. Let's have a wee look at this example here. So Leo here has managed to slip inside the Ganger hideout, and he has a clear shot at the leader because he is hidden. His advantage on his range test attack. However, since the leader is at long range, the last pistol he has, with its medium range, has disadvantage. The gang leader is also in a poorly lit area. This poses disadvantage on ranged attacks. One advantage and disadvantage cancel each other out. So a bit like D&D 5th edition. But one source of disadvantage remains. Leo must make the test at disadvantage. Oh, so right away, that is different. So, unlike Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, where we just, it doesn't matter how many advantage and disadvantage you have, they cancel them all out. You have like 10 disadvantage and 1 advantage, and then it cancels it all out. This one, you're having to count up the advantages and disadvantages. So again, we're back at this thing of like what things are given advantage on those tests. And then we've got this bit here as well. If you have multiple sources of advantage, disadvantage, they cancel each other out. You win advantage from if you gain advantage from multiple sources, each instance after the first grants you an additional +10 to the test. And then equally, each instance of disadvantage after the first deals a -10 to the test. Why is the advantage thing there anyway? I'm not convinced by this system. Just make it a +10. If you have some advantage on your test, make it a +10. Make it a +20. Ditch this advantage nonsense. I honestly, I don't think you need it. It just seems to muddle the system more than what Dark Heresy had. Yes, you had a big ass table of modifiers, but you could simply just go down it and work out differences. Instead of going, this skill or talent gives me advantage here, this particular effect gives me this effect, gives me some, the fog or the poorly lit area disadvantage, adding them all up together and then going, alright, okay, so we've got this whole making the dice roll and then reversing it or not, depending if you've got a sum total advantage or disadvantage, and then going, oh, I've still got an excess of advantage or disadvantage, I need to then add additional -10s or +10s to the test. It started off trying to make things easier, and then I think they've confused it more. Maybe it's not as bad as I think. Maybe if I play some more games, it'll be okay. But I still need convincing, I think. So, on to the next bit. Okay, so between missions, what does your party do in between missions? Well, that's what this section of the book is all about. In it, we have events and endeavours, which give the players and the Gamesmaster some good activities for them to take part in, and lots of cool monkey wrenches to throw into the plots, which you can play with. So, first thing, events. Each player rolls on a table, and it's a fun way to kind of show the world is still turning as the players are going about their lives and their missions and things. And the results can be, some are beneficial, gifts perhaps, or favours that are owed to you from various people, or weird things like the planet you're on starts a riot, like a food riot or something maybe, or a bounty is put on your head, which could, you know, potentially cause you some trouble down the road. Once the events are all kind of out of the way, you can work towards endeavours, either on your own, or perhaps part of group endeavour. If everybody chips in to do a group endeavour, you can try come together and do something like, say, improve the influence of your patron, or work towards some other kind of goal. Which actually brings up a point I noticed where it talks about increasing the patron's influence, and it mentions to succeed, each member of the party must contribute to a hard -20 group persuasion tests with a complexity of 6. There's nowhere in the book I can see that actually explains what that means. I can't see any rules at all for group persuasion, so that's a bit of an oversight. If I was to guess, I'd say it's probably the whole party has to make persuasion checks, and then a combined success level of 6 between them all to represent the complexity 6. But that's a guess. That's me just putting on my Gamesmaster hat and then figuring it out. But yeah, that's a bit of a weird one. They've kind of overlooked that. But yeah, no, definitely a cool idea for the players to kind of take part in. You know, you could do like extreme drilling, which kind of helps you in your next mission. So you can maybe ignore a fumble or some extra medici stuff if you've, you know, suffered an injury somehow, or some sort of devout worship to temporarily increase your fate. That's a fun one. But yeah, it gives you all these kind of different things you can do. With reputation, do some training, scout surroundings, and so long. So much. Consult with savants to learn more about stuff. So yeah, there are lots of activities there for the players to do between missions, which is a solid addition, I think. And I guess that will take us on to the next section. So the last few sections of the book, pretty standard stuff really. We've got a section on Imperium, something you tend to get in most kind of Warhammer 40,000 source type books. Just a brief bit about the Imperium and factions, but it does go into specifics about things in the Macharian sector, which is where Imperium Maledictum is set. So Imperium Maledictum is all in this bit of space, the Macharian sector, and it was cut off after the big rift in the galaxy chopped the Imperium in half, and you know it all kind of it didn't go well for them. You know, as much as a lot of bits in the Imperium lost the all sort of communication with the wider Imperium. You know, lots of things ended up getting kind of rough, you know, with raiders and, you know, pirates and Xenos attacking and all this kind of thing. So that's kind of some of the stuff on that. The next section in the book is the Macharian sector, which tells you more about the background of Lord Solar Macarius, who the sector is named after. Great conquest that he took part in, and what kind of happened after that. And it goes into some good details about some different kind of factions and things that are in there. So, for example, you know, some rogue traders that are of note within the area, Captain Ion Hawkscar, or the Klaskolov dynasty, and so on. And then the really cool thing is some details about some of the worlds. So we've got like Persepolis here, and some information about Hive Scarthius and Hive Valius, and then a little kind of venture hook you can do with that kind of planet. And then they've got the same for quite a few other planets in this section, so that's good. Lots of things the Gamesmaster can use to try come up with their own kind of plot. Because that is one thing, the book does not actually contain an adventure, and it looks like the things up further at the moment are just the book and the screen, so we'll have to wait for some adventures down the road, I guess. But that kind of makes up most of that section there. And we're on to the next bit, which would be the Gamesmaster. The one running the game. Creator of plot and final adjudicator on rules and so on. Every kind of tabletop role-playing game has a section on the Gamesmaster, gives them some kind of advice, and it's good. It's pretty much the standard stuff you'd expect. Stuff to kind of talk about with the players in session 0, talking about themes and so on, and how you're going to run it, and stuff on the kind of rewards you give the players, experience, and there's even a good kind of table for like encounter complications, which can be quite helpful. Yeah, so there you go. Good kind of table to kind of help throw a wrench in the works as well, you know. The location unpredictably moves, shakes or lurches. That's kind of a nice environmental hazard for you, or you can get tactical ones or time-sensitive ones and so on. And then we've got this bit. It's GM Toolkit, which, bless them, they did actually realise there was an issue with the zone thing. That some people, probably like people like myself, come into this and go, why is it so vague? I feel, especially nowadays, with a much greater popularity of virtual tabletop systems, people have got to quite like the whole grid system, or using miniatures. And here they give you a system to kind of convert everything, in which case they say, right, okay, if your movement is slow, you can go 4 meters, if you're storm, we can go 8, fast, you can go 12. And then they do something for the guns as well. Yeah, so ranges for weapons and effects are follows. You may fire a weapon normally, or up to twice the range at disadvantage. So if you've got a medium range gun, you can go 24 meters or 48 at disadvantage. And then, you know, it gives you some gains on, you know, grid size if you're using small, medium, large creatures, so on. It's a quick fix. It's good to kind of, if you wanted to do that kind of more precise meter kind of approach for the game. But the thing is, if you've come from, I feel like if you come from Dark Heresy, you're going to be looking at this with, you might not be looking at this as being great. And especially when you look at something like Dark Heresy for the level of detail you had in weapons. Each one had its own kind of character, whereas forged, or known to be forged, that kind of thing. You got more of this with the Inquisitor's Handbook, to be honest, than the core book, but they're really putting in a lot of effort, and from that book onwards, to kind of describe some of these weapons. And they'll have their own kind of ranges and kind of quirks and stuff, and it gave you a lot more variety in the guns. In this, it feels very generic. So, will that make for a better game? I think it will certainly make for probably a smoother game, easier to run. But if you do want the ranges, you know, there is a kind of this conversion thing here. So there is the option there, at least, you know. And then there's some more advice and stuff. And then finally, we're on to the Bestiary section. So the Bestiary, or the kind of monster manual type section, I guess. Here you can see an example of a ganger, and all the kind of stuff going on with them. So they've got your kind of stats there, you've got your armor, your wounds, speed, the kind of weapons they have, and they've got the resolve thing I mentioned earlier. So this ganger has a resolve of 1, which means if somehow you manage to build up the party's presence, you know, then you could potentially make these guys quite easily break or, you know, go crazy fighting for their lives or just run away. You know, there's options there. It's quite cool. And there is, of course, all sorts of different kind of things there. You've got some advice, of course, usual sort of things you get for like the troops, elites, and leaders, you know, kind of recommended characteristics and skills, that kind of thing. And the same sort of thing you get with the older systems as well, where it's like, you know, don't bother too much about critical wounds, unless maybe they're elites, in which case it works well for that sort of thing. And there we go. I believe that is most of the things in the game, to be honest. It goes there for Astropass and so on. Again, there's lots of different kind of profile types there, but I'm not going to go through them all. And with that, we're just left to the appendix. So you've got things like your fumble table, your curio tables for different little things your characters could have, which is quite good. It's kind of quick reference stuff for the conditions and so on. Very kind of detailed critical wound tables and such likes. A nice kind of guide here for who you want to play. You're like, well, I like the idea of playing some kind of preacher. Well, if you go down here, it says, alright, so you want to play a preacher. You probably want a Shrine Wars faction to be the Adeptus Ministratum, and then a role as a Zealot. So that gives you kind of guides there. That's which is quite helpful for maybe people who are a bit newer, don't quite realise where everybody fits in, kind of things. And then, of course, character sheets. I never showed the full one earlier, actually, so you've got your main one for characteristics. Then you've got your weapons, armour, powers, and all that kind of stuff. And then there's another sheet for agents, your patron, your goals and allies, and then a bit for like your boons and liabilities and influence and so on. There we go. That is Imperium Maledictum. Okay then, closing thoughts. Imperium Maledictum. Am I happy I've ordered it? Yes, I am. There's a lot of good stuff in it. We have the whole Patron system, which gives you a lot more flexibility about different styles campaign. You don't have to be working for the Inquisition, you can be working for one of the various factions that are out there. The character creation, I like it. Lots of cool stuff there. Interesting system using the whole some experience if you take the randomness. Skills and talents. I like what they've done with the system. Having your characteristic, your skill, and then a specialization seems good. It seems cleaner than just going, here's like 50 skills, enjoy. So yeah, I think that's definitely a good change there. Psychic powers seem to operate more or less as you'd expect. To be honest, psychic powers have changed every kind of edition of Dark Heresy, and they're kind of related systems. The psychic powers in this look quite good. Sounds interesting. The balancing, keeping a warp charge, not too high, not too low, sort of thing. The armory and the rules, interesting. I'm not sure I'm convinced with the very kind of vague kind of system they've got in place. I think encumbrance, that's quite good. Don't feel like too many people particularly enjoy worrying the nitty gritty kilogram of carrying X amount of things. So that's not too bad. Just assigning things like encumbrance 1, encumbrance 2, and so on. That's okay. I can live with that. The guns themselves having generic ranges of short, medium. Not sure I'm convinced for this system. And a system where we've got highly detailed rules for critical injuries, etc. And then you've got like a whole modifier system of going like -30 plus 60 or whatever. It just seems strange that we've got, on the one hand, the game trying to be very detailed, crunchy. On the other hand, we've got it being very kind of loosey-goosey. I've no issue with generic ranges, short, medium, long sort of thing. That's fine. Blade Runner, for example, role-playing system. The rules in that are very kind of light. There's nothing too crazy. Nothing too kind of detailed. So it fits in with that. I'm not sure this fits in with this, especially as most people have come from probably a tabletop system to play this, where they're used to having precise ranges of their weapons and things. There is a workaround in the GM section. Nice that they included that. Still feels a bit kind of like hacked on as a sort of try to keep people happy. And what else do we have? We have like the between the mission stuff. I like that. Very good. The events and endeavours. Nice kind of system there to have things going on in between missions. Imperium and Macharian sections of the book, very good. Lots of kind of background stuff there, lots of ideas there you could use for a campaign. And the Gamemaster section, no complaints there. Standard stuff, user experience, here's ways you can run the game, etc. And then you've got your bestiaries and appendixes, which are great. All the kind of various kind of foes you'd want to start off a campaign and tables to kind of reference and stuff. It's good. To figure out exactly how much I enjoy the system, I'm going to have to play a few games, see how it goes. And who knows, maybe I'll be convinced. If not, I could see there's enough things similar between the two systems. You could potentially borrow things. I feel like you could potentially borrow the movement and weapons from Dark Heresy and then put them into this. How much that'd work, I'm not sure. Might need a bit of work to, make it kind of mesh. But yeah, no, solid system. Hats off to Cubicle 7, done a good job, I think, reviving the system, and I'm looking forward to seeing the upcoming books, which they've already teased. Going to see action books like Inquisition, and I imagine we'll see books for some other factions and more adventures. That's something I'm definitely interested in, seeing an adventure published from them. I feel like that's always a very good way to see how the publisher intends the rules to be used. And from that, it makes it easier to build adventures of your own. So we'll see. Futures are bright for Warhammer 40,000 Roleplay. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If so, give it a like, and we'll do some more dives into various games and things in the future. We'll see. So, until next time, see you later, Acolytes, and remember, the Emperor predicts.